You're selling a product or service and you got fixed cost and you got variable cost. But what effect do they have? Coming up now. Hi, I'm Oliver and welcome back to AskMeStartup, the channel where we talk about startups, small businesses and the world that surrounds them. Today's topic, fixed cost and variable cost, and what effect do they have on you as a startup? So today it's going to be a little different and I'm going to switch for that onto my iPad. Now, we have the fixed cost and the variable cost. So how do they differ? First of all, fixed costs are costs that are always there, no matter if you sell or produce a product or not. Hence, fixed costs can be something like rent, insurance, overhead, amortization, or depreciation. Whereas variable costs are costs that are associated with the manufacturing of a service or good, which could be the wages of people associated with manufacturing such a product, or direct materials, production supplies, shipping, and or commissions. Now, for you to understand why, you have to understand which costs have what effect on you as a startup. So I prepared an example for you with 3 different cases, all of which have the same total cost of manufacturing a product or service, but they have different levels of fixed cost and variable costs. Now, case number 1 has 40% of fixed cost and 50% of variable cost. Case number 2 has 20% of fixed cost and 70% of variable cost. And case number 3 has 10% of fixed cost and 80% of variable cost, but they all come up to 90%. So what effect does this have? Well, if you take a look now, okay, we can see that we have this revenue, which is we either have no revenue or we have our maximum TAM. Total addressable market. If you're not quite sure, it's up here. Okay, you can take a look at it. So let's go for case number 1. Case number 1 has, if you remember correctly, 40% of fixed costs. So it starts up here and it breaks the line up here, right? And that line actually corresponds to 80%. Now the break-even point at this stage will be 80%. So you have to have 80% of the possible sales that you just break even because of your fixed costs. If we take case number 2, we will have 20% fixed costs, okay? 20% down here. And you can see that the break-even point has shifted. Now the break-even point here is roughly around 67%. That's interesting. Because if you look at case number 3, where we only have 10% fixed cost, right? So the 10% down here, we can already see that the break-even point has shifted even further. Here down to 50%. Now this is interesting. What does this tell you? It actually tells you if you have lower fixed costs and more variable costs, you are much better off in times where you cannot predict your real revenue. Because all of this, up to from 50% to 100%, all of this, that is your upside. From here on, so if you manage to get 50% of your predicted sales, you're already cash positive. You break even, and from that day on, you're not losing money. Which is great and important because startups in general tend to have fluctuations in their profit. If you manage to get 100%, up here would be your EBIT. That would be all your earnings before interest and taxes. That is for all, in this scenario, all the same. And I'm not going to go into deeper leverage here because, of course, operating leverage comes into play now if you manage to get more sales than you projected. But in general, keep this graph in mind. The lower your fixed costs are, the easier you are with market reductions and GDP losses as we have right now in this pandemic. Having high fixed costs, which a lot of startups tend to do, will actually kill you faster and you will struggling much harder. All right. Thank you everybody for listening to this video. I hope you learned something today. If you got questions on this and what are your perfect and optimized fixed costs by variable costs, just leave a comment down below and I see you next time.